The airport was eerily quiet at 3 a.m. My night shift had finally ended, and I stretched, feeling the exhaustion seep into my bones. My phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. It was my husband, John. "Hey, Lisa. I'm so sorry, but I'm stuck at work. I can't pick you up tonight." His voice was filled with regret. I sighed. "It's okay, John. I'll take the train and bus. Don't worry about it." Hanging up, I made my way to the train station. This wasn't the first time I'd had to navigate public transportation at this hour, but tonight felt different. I couldn't shake the unease that settled over me. I boarded the train and found a seat near the middle of the car. There were only a few passengers, most of them dozing or absorbed in their phones. Across from me sat a man, his gaze fixed on me. His stare was unrelenting, and a shiver ran down my spine. At first, I tried to ignore him, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. But as the train clattered along the tracks, his eyes never left me. My heart began to race, and I glanced around, hoping to see someone who could help if things got worse. The train slowed as we approached my stop. I stood up, intending to lose him in the shuffle of passengers. To my horror, he stood up too, moving closer. Panic surged through me as I quickly exited the train, my mind racing. I hurried to the bus stop, glancing over my shoulder. He was still following me, his presence like a dark shadow. The bus couldn't come soon enough. I fumbled for my phone, considering calling John, but I didn't want to worry him more than he already was. The bus arrived, and I rushed on, hoping to lose him in the process. But as I settled into a seat, I saw him board as well. He didn't sit down, but stood near the front, his eyes scanning the passengers until they locked onto me. Fear tightened its grip on my chest. I had to think fast. My stop was coming up, and I needed a plan. When the bus approached the next stop, I made a split-second decision. I stood up and quickly got off, moving towards the second car of the waiting train. Maybe I could hide there and call for help. As I slipped into the empty car, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's calm voice was a stark contrast to my panic. I'm being followed, I whispered, my voice trembling. There's a man who's been following me since I left the airport. I'm on a train now, hiding in the second car. Stay on the line. Help is on the way. Do you see the man? I peeked out from my hiding spot. He was searching the platform, frustration etched on his face. Yes, he's looking for me. Try to stay hidden and keep the line open. Police officers are en route. Minutes felt like hours as I crouched behind a row of seats. The sound of approaching sirens filled me with relief. I peered out again and saw police officers entering the station. We're here, the operator said. You can come out now. I stood up and waved to the officers, who quickly surrounded the man. He was arrested without incident, and I was led out of the train, my legs trembling with relief. They escorted me home, where John was waiting, his face pale with worry. I told him everything, and we both realized how important it was to stay vigilant. That night would forever be etched in my memory, but I knew I had faced my fear and survived. The next day I woke up with a lingering sense of unease. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't escape. John tried to comfort me, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Are you sure you're okay to go back to work tonight? He asked, as he handed me a cup of coffee. I have to, I replied, forcing a smile. I can't let fear control me. The day passed in a blur, and before I knew it, it was time for my night shift. The airport was bustling as usual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Every shadow seemed menacing, every passerby a potential threat. As my shift neared its end, I found myself dreading the journey home. John had promised to pick me up this time, but I couldn't rely on that. I needed a plan, just in case. Sure enough, as I clocked out, my phone buzzed again. It was John. Lisa, I'm so sorry. There's an emergency at work. I can't leave. My heart sank. It's okay, John. I'll manage. Just be safe. I headed to the train station, trying to stay calm. The platform was nearly empty, and I felt a chill run down my spine. As the train pulled up, I noticed a man getting in the same car as me. My breath caught in my throat when I realized it was the same man from the night before. I took a seat, my mind racing. Why was he here again? Was he following me? I glanced around, hoping someone else would notice my distress, but the few passengers seemed oblivious. The man sat a few rows behind me, his eyes boring into my back. I felt the weight of his stare and fought the urge to run. I needed to think clearly. The train rumbled on, each stop bringing a fresh wave of anxiety. When we reached a particularly deserted station, I made a quick decision. I bolted from my seat and exited the train, running towards the second car. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, hoping I'd lost him. But when I looked back, he was still there, his expression more determined than ever. I needed to get help, and fast. My hands shook as I dialed 911 again. 911, what's your emergency? It's happening again, I whispered, my voice barely audible. The man from last night, he's following me again. Where are you now? The operator asked. I'm on a train, second car. He's still following me. Stay on the line. We're sending officers your way. I crouched down, trying to stay out of sight. The minutes dragged by, and I prayed the police would arrive soon. I peeked out and saw the man moving through the cars, searching for me. His persistence terrified me. Suddenly the train lurched to a stop, and I heard the familiar sound of sirens. Relief washed over me as I saw officers boarding the train. They quickly apprehended the man, who protested loudly as they led him away. One of the officers approached me. "Are you okay, ma'am?" I nodded, tears of relief streaming down my face. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." "You did the right thing by calling us," he said. "We'll make sure he doesn't bother you again." They escorted me off the train, and I finally felt a sense of safety. John was waiting for me at the station, his face a mix of relief and guilt. "I'm so sorry, Lisa," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. "I should have been there." "It's okay," I whispered, holding him close. "It's over now." But as we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The man's determination haunted me, and I knew I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The days following the second encounter were a blur of anxiety and restless nights. John tried to be supportive, but the fear had taken root deep within me. Every shadow seemed threatening, every stranger a potential danger. I couldn't let this man control my life, but the dread was overwhelming. Determined to reclaim my peace of mind, I took some precautions. I enrolled in a self-defense class, hoping that learning to protect myself would help alleviate some of my fear. The instructor, a tough but kind woman named Maggie, showed me techniques to defend against various attacks. With each lesson, I felt a small piece of my confidence returning. "I want you to remember," Maggie said during one class, "that your greatest weapon is your mind. Stay alert, stay aware, and trust your instincts." Her words resonated with me. I couldn't let my fear paralyze me. I had to be proactive and vigilant. Returning to work, I kept my guard up. I informed airport security about the incidents, and they assured me they would keep an eye out. John arranged for a ride-sharing service to take me home after my shifts if he couldn't pick me up. The precautions made me feel a bit safer, but the anxiety lingered. A week later, I had another late shift. The night passed uneventfully, and I hoped it would stay that way. My ride was scheduled to arrive soon, but as I walked towards the exit, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the ride-sharing service. "Your driver has cancelled. Please rebook." Panic threatened to set in, but I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. I would rebook another ride. Just as I opened the app, I saw him. The man from the train stood near the entrance, his eyes locked onto mine. Fear surged through me, but this time I was determined not to let it consume me. I quickly made my way back into the airport, hoping the crowds would deter him. I needed to find a safe place and call for help. Ducking into a busy cafe, I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? It's happening again, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The man who's been following me, he's here at the airport. Stay where you are. We're sending officers right away. I stayed on the line, watching the entrance. To my relief, airport security approached me first, alerted by the call. They escorted me to a secure area while the police were on their way. Minutes later, the police arrived, and the man was detained. This time, they found enough evidence to press charges. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion as I watched him being led away. One of the officers, a kind man named Officer Harris, sat with me. "You did everything right," he said. "It's over now. He won't be bothering you anymore." "Thank you," I said, tears of relief welling up. "I just want to feel safe again." "You will," he assured me. But remember, you're stronger than you think. You faced your fear head-on and won. John arrived soon after, his face filled with concern and relief. As we drove home, I felt a sense of calm for the first time in weeks. The ordeal had been terrifying, but I had faced it and come out stronger. Back at home, I reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the anxiety, and ultimately, the triumph. I knew that life would never be completely free of danger, but I had learned to trust my instincts and take control of my safety. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a newfound sense of empowerment. The man who had haunted my nights was no longer a threat, and I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. The days that followed felt surreal. The man who had terrorized me was behind bars, and I should have felt relief, but the anxiety lingered. The self-defense classes continued, and with each session I grew stronger and more confident. Maggie, my instructor, became a source of encouragement and wisdom. "Remember, Lisa," she said one evening after class, "strength isn't just physical. It's about mental resilience. You face something terrifying and come out stronger. Don't forget that." Her words echoed in my mind as I resumed my routine. Work at the airport continued as usual, but I remained vigilant, always aware of my surroundings. John's support was unwavering, and he made sure to accompany me whenever he could. On nights when he couldn't, the ride-sharing service became my go-to, and I always double-checked the driver's details. One evening, as I finished my shift, I noticed a new security measure at the airport, a series of cameras installed in key locations. The airport administration had taken my ordeal seriously and implemented changes to ensure better safety for all employees. On my way to the exit, I bumped into Officer Harris, who had become somewhat of a familiar face around the airport. "Hey, Lisa," he greeted me with a warm smile. "How are you holding up?" "Better, thanks to the new security measures," I replied. "It's comforting to see the changes." "We're doing everything we can to ensure this doesn't happen again," he assured me. "You're not alone in this." I thanked him and headed to my ride. The familiar unease still lingered, but it was tempered by a growing sense of control over my situation. As I settled into the back seat, I reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The nightmares became less frequent, and my confidence continued to grow. I stayed in touch with Maggie, who constantly reminded me of my progress. One night, after a particularly long shift, I received a call from John. "Hey, Lisa, I'm running late again. Can you manage?" I took a deep breath, the old fear threatening to resurface, but I reminded myself of everything I had learned. "Don't worry, John, I've got this. See you at home." As I walked to the train station, I noticed how different I felt. The shadows and strangers no longer held the same power over me. I boarded the train, my eyes scanning the car with practiced ease. This time, there was no one staring, no ominous presence. When I reached my stop, I exited the train confidently and made my way to the bus. The night was quiet, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. As I boarded the bus, I found a seat and settled in, feeling the weariness of the day slip away. Halfway through the ride, a familiar face boarded the bus. It was one of my colleagues from the airport, Karen. She smiled and sat next to me. "Hey, Lisa, it's been a while since I've seen you on the bus." "Yeah, I've been using a ride-sharing service," I explained. "But tonight, I decided to take the bus." We chatted for the rest of the ride, and I felt a sense of normalcy returning. When we reached my stop, Karen hugged me. "Take care, Lisa. See you at work." "Thanks, Karen, you too." As I walked the short distance home, I felt a mix of emotions. The journey had been long and fraught with fear, but I had come out stronger. The man who had terrorized me was no longer a threat, and I had reclaimed my life. John was waiting for me at the door, a warm smile on his face. "Welcome home, Lisa." "Thanks, John," I said, hugging him tightly. "It's good to be home." That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything that had happened. The fear and anxiety were still there, but they were now tempered by a newfound strength and resilience. I knew that life would always have its challenges, but I was ready to face them head on. For the first time in a long while, I fell asleep with a sense of peace, knowing that I had the strength to overcome whatever came my way. Life gradually settled into a new routine. The shadow of the past incidents still lingered, but they no longer dictated my every move. With each passing day, I grew more comfortable, reclaiming the confidence that had been shaken. My self-defense classes with Maggie continued to be a source of strength and empowerment. One evening, after an intense session, Maggie approached me. "Lisa, you've come a long way. You should be proud of yourself." "Thanks, Maggie," I replied, wiping sweat from my brow. "I feel different, stronger, more in control." "That's because you are," she said with a smile. "Remember, you're not just surviving, you're thriving." Her words stayed with me as I headed home. I took the train and bus as usual, but this time I felt a newfound sense of security. The familiar journey, once fraught with anxiety, had become a testament to my resilience. At work, things were better too. My colleagues, aware of what had happened, were supportive and vigilant. Karen, especially, became a close friend, often riding home with me when our shifts aligned. The airport administration's increased security measures also provided an added layer of reassurance. One night, after another long shift, Karen and I were waiting for the bus. We chatted about mundane things, weekend plans, favorite movies, enjoying the normalcy of it all. When the bus arrived, we boarded and found seats together, continuing our conversation. Halfway through the ride, Karen leaned over. "You know, Lisa, you're an inspiration. What you went through, it's incredible how you've handled it." I shrugged, feeling a mix of pride and humility. I just did what I had to do, but it's nice to hear that. As we approached my stop, Karen gave me a reassuring smile. "See you tomorrow, Lisa." "See you, Karen." The short walk home was peaceful. The air was crisp and the stars shone brightly above. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support system that had helped me through the toughest times. John was waiting for me as usual, his presence a constant source of comfort. "How was your day?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "Good," I replied, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "Good." Over dinner, we talked about the future, vacation plans, home improvement projects, and dreams we wanted to pursue. The conversation was light and hopeful, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had once dominated our lives. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how far I had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but I had faced my fears and come out stronger on the other side. The man who had haunted my nights was no longer a threat, and I had reclaimed my sense of safety and control. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling a sense of purpose. I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, something I hadn't done in a long time. As I strolled through the familiar streets, I marveled at how much had changed within me. I passed by a park where children were playing, their laughter filling the air. It was a reminder of the simple joys in life, the moments that made everything worthwhile. I found a bench and sat down, taking in the scene. A woman walking her dog stopped nearby, and we struck up a conversation. It was a small, pleasant interaction, but it reminded me of the connections that made life meaningful. As I continued my walk, I felt a deep sense of peace. Returning home, I found John in the kitchen making breakfast. "You're up early," he said, glancing at me with a smile. "Felt like taking a walk," I replied, joining him at the table. It was nice. We spent the morning together, enjoying each other's company and planning for the future. The shadow of the past had finally lifted, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The journey had been long and difficult, but I had come through it stronger and more resilient. Life will always have its challenges, but I was ready to face them with courage and determination. For the first time in a long while, I fell asleep with a sense of peace, knowing that I had the strength to overcome whatever came my way. Several months had passed since the man who terrorized me was arrested. Life had settled into a comforting rhythm, and the anxiety that once consumed me had faded to a distant memory. I felt stronger, more confident, and ready to face whatever challenges came my way. One evening, after another uneventful shift at the airport, I received a call from John. "Hey, Lisa, I'm running a bit late. Can you take the bus home?" "Sure, no problem," I replied, feeling the usual twinge of disappointment, but reminding myself that I had handled this before and could do it again. The bus ride was quiet. I sat near the front, watching the city lights blur past. As we neared my stop, I noticed a familiar face in the back of the bus. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. It was him, the man who had stalked me months ago. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I quickly texted John, telling him what was happening and that I needed help. The bus came to a halt, and I saw the man start to move towards the front. I had to act fast. I got off the bus, blending into the small crowd at the stop. My mind raced as I tried to think of a safe place to go. I spotted a convenience store across the street and hurried inside. The bright lights and presence of other people made me feel a bit safer. I ducked into an aisle, keeping an eye on the entrance. To my horror, the man entered the store, his eyes scanning the aisles. My heart pounded as I tried to think of my next move. I needed to call the police, but my hands were shaking so badly that I could barely dial the number. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was a lifeline. It's Lisa Parker, the man who was arrested for stalking me. He's here. He followed me off the bus and into a store. I'm scared. Stay where you are, Lisa. Officers are on their way. Do you see him now? Yes, I whispered, peeking around the corner. He's looking for me. Find a safe place to hide and stay on the line. I moved towards the back of the store, slipping into the storage area. The staff gave me curious looks, but I couldn't explain. I needed to stay hidden until help arrived. Minutes felt like hours as I crouched behind some boxes, listening for any sounds of approach. Finally, I heard the sirens and the unmistakable sound of police officers entering the store. Relief washed over me, and I stood up, making my way back to the front. The man was being escorted out in handcuffs, his expression one of frustration and anger. Officer Harris was among the officers, and he approached me with a reassuring smile. You did well, Lisa. He won't be bothering you again. Thank you, I said, my voice trembling with relief. I thought this was over. He was released on bail, Harris explained. But with this new incident, he'll be facing more serious charges. You were brave to call us and hide. John arrived shortly after, his face pale with worry. He hugged me tightly, and I felt the tension finally start to ease. I'm so sorry, Lisa. I should have been there. It's okay, John. I handled it, I replied, feeling a sense of pride despite the fear. The ride home was quiet, but John's presence was a comfort. As we pulled into the driveway, he turned to me. We need to take extra precautions from now on. I know, I said, feeling the weight of the situation settles over me. We'll get through this. Back at home, we discussed additional security measures. John insisted on installing a home security system and getting me a personal alarm. I agreed, knowing that these steps were necessary to ensure my safety. The following days were a mix of relief and heightened vigilance. The police kept me informed about the case, and I stayed in close contact with Officer Harris. The self-defense classes continued, and Maggie was a constant source of encouragement. You did everything right, she told me during our next session. You're a fighter, Lisa. Don't forget that. Her words gave me strength. I knew that I couldn't let fear control my life. I had faced this threat head-on and survived, and I was determined to continue living my life without constant fear. The experience had changed me, but it hadn't broken me. I was stronger, more resilient, and ready to face whatever came next. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead might be uncertain, but I knew I had the strength to navigate it. For the first time in a long while, I fell asleep with a sense of hope, knowing that I had the power to overcome any obstacle. The days following the incident at the convenience store were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. John and I took every precaution to ensure my safety. We installed a comprehensive home security system, complete with cameras and motion sensors, and I started carrying a personal alarm. These measures helped, but the fear still lingered at the edges of my mind. At work, my colleagues rallied around me, offering support and encouragement. Karen, in particular, made sure we coordinated our shifts so we could travel home together as often as possible. Her presence was a comfort, and we often found ourselves talking late into the night about everything and nothing. How are you holding up, Lisa? Karen asked one evening as we waited for the bus. Better, I think, I replied, looking around cautiously. It's just knowing he's out there. It's hard to relax. I get it, but remember, you're not alone in this. We're all here for you, she said, squeezing my hand. The bus arrived and we boarded, settling into our usual seats. As the city lights flickered past, I felt a sense of normalcy returning. The routine was comforting, and I clung to it as a lifeline. At home, John was my rock. He was always there to listen, to hold me when the nightmares came, and to remind me that we were doing everything possible to stay safe. Our evenings were filled with quiet conversations, making plans for the future, and finding solace in each other's company. One weekend, John suggested we take a short trip to the countryside to get away from everything. At first I was hesitant, but the idea of a change of scenery and a break from the constant vigilance was appealing. We rented a cozy cabin nestled in the woods, far from the noise and stress of the city. The air was fresh, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. It was exactly what we needed. On the second day, we went for a hike, the forest offering a serene backdrop for our thoughts. As we walked, I felt a sense of calm that had been elusive for so long. The beauty of nature and the steady presence of John by my side were healing. "Thank you for bringing me here," I said, squeezing his hand. "I needed this." "Anything for you, Lisa," he replied with a smile. "We both needed this." The hike was invigorating, and by the time we returned to the cabin, I felt a renewed sense of strength. That evening, we sat by the fire, talking about everything we'd been through and the future we wanted to build. "We've been through so much," John said, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "But we've come out stronger. I'm so proud of you, Lisa." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling a surge of gratitude and love. "You've been my rock." As the fire crackled and the night grew darker, I felt a deep sense of peace. The cabin, the woods, and the time away from the city had given me a chance to breathe and to heal. Returning to the city was bittersweet. The memories of the past months were still there, but I felt better equipped to handle them. I continued my self-defense classes with Maggie, who remained a constant source of strength and encouragement. "Remember, Lisa," she said during one session, "you're not just learning to defend yourself physically. You're building mental resilience. You've faced your worst fears and come out stronger." Her words resonated with me. I had faced my fears head-on, and I was determined not to let them control my life. Several weeks had passed since our trip to the countryside, and life in the city was slowly becoming more manageable. The anxiety that once consumed me had lessened, replaced by a cautious optimism. I continued my self-defense classes with Maggie, who remained an unwavering source of strength. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Maggie pulled me aside. "Lisa, you've made incredible progress. I think you're ready for something more advanced." I was taken aback. "More advanced? Like what?" "There's a course on personal safety and awareness. It's not just about physical defense. It's about understanding your surroundings and staying one step ahead. I think it would be perfect for you." I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I'll do it. Sign me up." The new course was intense, but it gave me a deeper understanding of how to protect myself and stay vigilant. It wasn't just about learning to fight, it was about cultivating a mindset of awareness and confidence. With each session, I felt more in control of my life. Meanwhile, at the airport, things were improving too. The increased security measures made everyone feel safer, and my colleagues continued to offer their support. Karen and I often worked the same shifts, and our friendship had grown stronger through the shared experience. One day, as we were having lunch, Karen mentioned an upcoming charity event organized by the airport staff. "You should come, Lisa. It'll be fun, and it's for a good cause." I hesitated. "I don't know, Karen. Crowds still make me a bit nervous." "I understand, but this is different. It's a safe environment, and it might be a good step forward." After some thought, I agreed. The event was a few weeks away, and I decided to use that time to prepare myself mentally. I continued my courses, focusing on building my confidence and reducing my anxiety in public spaces. When the day of the event arrived, I was nervous but determined. John accompanied me, his presence a reassuring anchor. The venue was bustling with people, but the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. As we entered, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was safe. Karen spotted us and waved excitedly. "Lisa, John, I'm so glad you made it." We joined her and some of our colleagues, chatting and enjoying the festivities. The initial tension slowly melted away, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and normalcy. It felt good to be part of something positive and uplifting. Throughout the evening, I found myself engaging in conversations and even laughing. The fear that had once gripped me so tightly was loosening its hold. By the end of the night, I felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. As we left the event, John looked at me with pride. "You did great tonight, Lisa. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, John. It felt good to be out and enjoy myself." The success of that evening gave me a new perspective. I realized that while the fear might never completely disappear, I had the power to manage it and continue living my life. I was not defined by what had happened to me, but by how I chose to move forward. Over the next few months, I continued to push myself out of my comfort zone. I attended more social events, reconnected with old friends, and even started a new hobby, photography. Capturing the world through my lens gave me a fresh perspective and a new outlet for expression. At work, I took on more responsibilities and even began mentoring new employees. The experience of helping others find their way in the busy airport environment was fulfilling and rewarding. One day, I received a call from Officer Harris. "Lisa, I have some news. The man who stalked you has been sentenced. He won't be able to harm anyone else." A wave of relief washed over me. "Thank you, Officer Harris. I can't tell you how much this means to me. You've shown incredible strength, Lisa. I'm glad to see you thriving." Hanging up, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of fear and anxiety was finally coming to an end, and a new chapter of hope and resilience was beginning. That evening, John and I sat on our porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, a beautiful reminder of the possibilities that lay ahead. "We've come a long way," John said, his arm around my shoulders. "Yes, we have," I replied, leaning into him, "and I'm ready for whatever comes next." For the first time in a long while, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been difficult, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. The relief of knowing the man who stalked me was finally behind bars brought a newfound sense of freedom. However, with that freedom came the realization that I had yet to fully confront the trauma that lingered in the corners of my mind. I had grown stronger, but there were still shadows of fear that I needed to address. One evening, John and I were having dinner when he brought up an idea. "Lisa, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for us to talk to someone professionally about everything that's happened." I looked at him, considering his words. "You mean therapy?" "Yes," he replied gently. "We've been through a lot, and it might help to have someone guide us through the healing process." I nodded, knowing he was right. The self-defense classes and support from friends and colleagues had helped immensely, but professional guidance could not provide the closure I needed. We found a therapist named Dr. Martinez, who specialized in trauma and recovery. The first session was daunting, but John's presence gave me the courage to face it. Dr. Martinez was warm and empathetic, creating an environment where I felt safe to share my experiences. "Tell me about what happened," she said gently. "Start from the beginning." As I recounted the events of the past year, the stalking, the fear, the moments of terror, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Dr. Martinez listened intently, occasionally asking questions that helped me delve deeper into my emotions. "How did you cope during those moments?" she asked. "I relied on John, my self-defense classes, and the support of my friends," I replied. "But there were times when I felt completely overwhelmed, like I was drowning in fear." Dr. Martinez nodded. "It's normal to feel that way after experiencing trauma. The key is to acknowledge those feelings and find ways to process them." Over the next few weeks, we continued our sessions. Dr. Martinez helped me understand the impact of trauma on my mind and body, teaching me techniques to manage anxiety and reclaim my sense of control. Each session was a step towards healing, and I began to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Meanwhile, life continued to move forward. Work at the airport was busy but fulfilling, and my friendship with Karen grew stronger. We often talked about our dreams and aspirations, and she encouraged me to pursue my passion for photography more seriously. "Why don't you start a photo blog?" she suggested one day. "You have a great eye for capturing moments." The idea intrigued me. Photography had become a therapeutic outlet, and sharing my work could be a way to connect with others and find joy in the everyday. I decided to give it a try, creating a blog where I posted my photos and wrote about my experiences. To my surprise, the blog quickly gained followers. People resonated with my story and the images I captured. It was a reminder that even amid darkness, there could be beauty and light. One afternoon, while editing photos, I received an email notification. It was from a local gallery, inviting me to participate in an upcoming photography exhibition. They had seen my blog and were impressed with my work. Excitement and nervousness bubbled up inside me. I shared the news with John, who was thrilled. "This is amazing, Lisa. You have to do it." With his encouragement, I agreed to participate. Preparing for the exhibition was a whirlwind of activity, but it was a welcome distraction. I chose photos that held special meaning, moments of peace, resilience, and beauty amidst chaos. The night of the exhibition arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. John, Karen, and several colleagues came to support me. As I stood in the gallery, surrounded by my work, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. One photo in particular caught the attention of many visitors. It was a picture I had taken during our trip to the countryside, sunlight filtering through the trees, casting a golden glow on the forest floor. It symbolized the journey from darkness to light, a journey I had taken and conquered. A woman approached me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Your photos are beautiful," she said, "and your story. It's incredibly inspiring." "Thank you," I replied, touched by her words. "It's been a long journey, but I'm grateful for where I am now." That night, as I stood surrounded by friends and strangers who had been moved by my work, I realized how far I had come. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had faced my fears, found strength in my vulnerability, and emerged stronger. As John and I walked home hand in hand, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road to recovery was ongoing, but I was no longer walking it alone. I had the support of loved ones, the guidance of Dr. Martinez, and the passion for photography that brought me joy. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. The success of the photography exhibition was a turning point in my journey. It marked the culmination of months of hard work and healing, and it opened new doors for me. The gallery offered me a permanent spot for my work, and I started receiving inquiries about commissioned projects. It felt like a dream coming true. One morning, as I was preparing for a new project, my phone buzzed with a message from Karen. "Lunch today? Got something to share with you." Intrigued, I agreed, and we met at our favorite cafe near the airport. Karen was already seated, a mischievous grin on her face. "What's up?" I asked, sitting down. "I have some exciting news," she said, unable to contain her excitement. "I got promoted. I'll be managing the new terminal." "Karen, that's amazing," I exclaimed, genuinely happy for her. "You deserve it." "Thanks, Lisa, and I couldn't have done it without your support. Speaking of which, I have a proposition for you." I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh? We're looking for someone to lead a new employee wellness program," she explained. "It's all about supporting staff, offering mental health resources, and creating a positive work environment. I think you'd be perfect for it." The idea was both exciting and daunting. "Wow, Karen, that sounds incredible. But do you think I'm the right person for the job?" "Absolutely," she said with conviction. "You've been through so much and come out stronger. Your experience and empathy are exactly what we need." After our lunch, I couldn't stop thinking about Karen's proposal. The idea of helping others navigate their struggles and creating a supportive environment resonated deeply with me. It felt like a natural extension of my journey and a way to give back. That evening, I discussed the opportunity with John. "What do you think?" I asked, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think it's perfect for you," he replied without hesitation. "You've got so much to offer, Lisa. This could be your chance to make a real difference." With John's encouragement and Karen's support, I decided to leap. I applied for the position and, after a series of interviews, was officially appointed as the head of the Employee Wellness Program. The new role was challenging, but it was also incredibly fulfilling. I worked closely with HR and other departments to develop initiatives that supported mental health, stress management, and overall well-being. One of my first initiatives was to introduce regular wellness workshops, focusing on topics like mindfulness, resilience, and work-life balance. I also arranged for guest speakers, including therapists and motivational speakers, to share their insights and experiences. The response from the staff was overwhelmingly positive. People appreciated the focus on their well-being and the resources available to them. I could see the difference it was making, and it reinforced my belief in the importance of mental health support in the workplace. As I settled into my new role, I continued to pursue my passion for photography. The gallery remained a significant part of my life, and I found that balancing both careers brought a sense of fulfillment and purpose. My blog also grew in popularity, and I received messages from people all over the world who were inspired by my story. One day, I received an email from a major photography magazine. They wanted to feature my work and share my journey with their readers. It was an incredible opportunity, and I eagerly agreed. The article highlighted my resilience and the power of art as a tool for healing and expression. The publication brought more attention to my photography, leading to new opportunities and collaborations. I was invited to speak at conferences and workshops, sharing my experience and the therapeutic power of creativity. Each engagement was a reminder of how far I had come and how much I had to offer. As the months passed, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support and love that surrounded me. John, Karen, and my colleagues had been my pillars of strength, and I was determined to give back in any way I could. One evening, as John and I were sitting on the porch, watching another beautiful sunset, I turned to him with a smile. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "Yes, we have," he replied, his eyes reflecting the same sense of peace and fulfillment I felt. "And I'm so proud of you, Lisa. You've turned your pain into something beautiful." "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." At that moment, I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming fear and trauma. It was about embracing life with all its challenges and joys and finding strength in vulnerability. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it with an open heart and a resilient spirit. As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. The road ahead was filled with possibilities, and I was excited to see where it would lead. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free, and I knew that whatever came next, I had the strength to overcome it and the courage to embrace the future with hope and determination.